In the heart of downtown Chicago, where ambition hummed louder than the traffic, Melissa Hart believed she'd finally found her place. For 5 years, she'd poured her energy into Halcyon Strategies, a sleek marketing agency known for transforming tech startups into household names. She wasn't a newcomer anymore. She'd earned her seat at the table. Late nights, spotless reports, quiet loyalty, it had all built up to this one chance. The Nexora account, a $10 million rebranding campaign that could define the next stage of her career. Melissa wasn't flashy. She didn't charm her way through meetings or make promises she couldn't keep. She was precise, the kind of strategist who understood that good marketing wasn't about noise, but about story. And that's what she'd built, a story. For 3 months, she'd sculpted every slide, every animation, every tagline for Nexora's presentation. It wasn't just numbers. It was vision, strategy, and emotion tied together in one seamless deck. She had shown it 3 times to her manager, Bryce Dalton, a man known for his sharp suits and sharper ego. Each time, Bryce offered the same hollow praise. "Looks good, Mel. Just remember, I'll take it from the top when we present." She nodded politely, even as her stomach turned. He had contributed nothing to the work, yet insisted on standing in front when it was time to shine. That was Bryce's way. He smiled like a mentor but maneuvered like a chess player. The morning of the presentation arrived gray and heavy. Chicago's skyline shimmered against a cold wind as Melissa stepped out of the train, gripping her laptop bag. By 7:00 a.m., she was in the office, 2 hours early. The building was silent except for the low hum of the air vents and the soft rhythm of her keystrokes. She opened the Nexora presentation once more, scanning through each slide. Everything was perfect. 72 slides, transitions clean, embedded video working flawlessly. Bryce arrived later, latte in hand, smelling of expensive cologne and entitlement. "Morning, superstar," he said, setting his coffee down. "You ready to impress the future?" Melissa smiled faintly. "All set, just double-checking the animations." He nodded and leaned closer. "Send me the final version. I'll upload it to the main conference drive. You know how picky it is with permissions." It sounded routine. Bryce often handled the conference setup. She attached the file and hit send. Then she left to grab a coffee, not knowing those 10 minutes would destroy months of work. When she returned, Bryce was packing inside the glass conference room. He looked up with a strange mix of calm and tension. "Hey, Mel, small problem," he said lightly. "Looks like your presentation didn't save right." Melissa frowned. "What do you mean?" "It won't open. Says it's corrupted." Her heart skipped. "That's impossible, I just checked it." "These things happen," Bryce replied, shrugging. "Did you back it up anywhere?" She reached for her laptop, panic rising. Her local folder was empty, her backup drive also empty. The Nexora pitch file was still listed, but when she clicked it, the document was blank. Bryce exhaled slowly. "We've got 15 minutes until the meeting. I'll have to improvise." He gave her a sympathetic smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Don't worry, I'll handle it." At 10:00 a.m., the Nexora executives arrived, 4 of them, sharp suits and measured smiles. They took their seats around the polished table as the projector flickered to life. Melissa sat quietly, heart thudding. The slides on screen weren't hers. Bryce had replaced her entire presentation with a blank template, generic logos, vague talking points, recycled buzzwords. No story, no data, no visuals. Nothing that resembled the project she had built. He began to speak anyway. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Bryce Dalton, account director here at Halcyon. We're thrilled to partner with Nexora." The words rolled out smooth and empty. He was winging it, talking about market scalability and cross-platform integration like he was reading from a corporate dictionary. The Nexora CEO's brow furrowed. He glanced down at a printed copy of the agenda Melissa had sent the week before, one that detailed a completely different pitch. Halfway through, one of the executives interrupted. Excuse me, what happened to the narrative document Melissa shared last week? The storytelling framework. Bryce froze. Ah, yes, we're still refining that internally. There were inconsistencies. The CEO looked unconvinced. It seemed pretty consistent to us. Bryce forced a laugh. Well, that's why I'm here to make sure it's airtight. The rest of the meeting dragged painfully. By the end, the Nexora team was polite but distant. They thanked Bryce and left early, offering no clear feedback, no next steps. Melissa sat in silence as the door closed behind them. Bryce turned toward her, his smile gone. Tough crowd, he muttered. Then softer, you really should have backed up your files. That afternoon, an email arrived in her inbox, subject, performance review urgent. Inside was a meeting invite from HR. When she entered the small, windowless office, Bryce was already there, seated beside the HR representative with a look of performative concern. Melissa, he began, we need to talk about what happened this morning. She sat down, keeping her voice calm. What happened is that the presentation file vanished. I don't know how, but... Let's not get defensive, Bryce interrupted smoothly. The client was disappointed. They said our materials weren't ready. That's a reflection on the team. Her throat tightened. You saw the final version. I sent it to you myself. Bryce sighed, playing the part of the weary leader. Look, I'm not here to point fingers, but this was your responsibility. I can't have this kind of sloppiness on a major account. The HR manager nodded, taking notes. We'll need to file a performance warning, Melissa. It'll be reviewed in 60 days. She sat frozen, her years of work reduced to a single manufactured failure. Bryce leaned back in his chair. Let's just learn from this, okay? We all make mistakes. It was the smile afterward that broke her. That quiet, satisfied smile that said he knew exactly what he'd done. Over the next few weeks, the walls closed in. Her inbox grew quiet. Her projects were reassigned to help her focus. Team meetings were suddenly over capacity. She became invisible. And office gossip filled the void. In the break room, she overheard a whisper. I heard she crashed the Nexora pitch, deleted her own deck or something. She stood frozen, coffee cup trembling in her hand. Bryce had rewritten the narrative completely, and everyone believed him. 2 weeks later, while cleaning her cloud folders, Melissa stumbled upon a file she didn't recognize. It was shared to her workspace by accident, labeled Nexora Pitch Final Bryce Edit, PPTX. Her breath caught. She opened it. There it was, her presentation. Every slide intact, every animation she'd crafted with care. Except now, the metadata at the top read, created by Bryce Dalton. And on the last slide, he had added one line in small print. Developed and presented by Bryce Dalton, Account Director, Halcyon Strategies. Her fingers shook as she scrolled through the pages. He hadn't deleted her work. He'd stolen it, rebranded it, and erased her name. The corruption, the empty folders, it had all been an act. For the first time in weeks, her anger burned through the fog of humiliation. She saved screenshots, timestamps, metadata logs, quietly, methodically. If Bryce wanted to play dirty, she would play smart. The Nexora account had gone quiet since the failed pitch. Rumor was they were reconsidering whether to work with Halcyon at all. Bryce brushed it off in meetings. These things take time. But Melissa noticed his growing restlessness. He was nervous, and she had no idea why. Until the call came. It was late Friday afternoon when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Hello. A woman's voice, calm and precise. Hi, is this Melissa Hart? This is Cara Lynn, VP of Marketing at Nexora. Melissa straightened in her chair. Yes, this is Melissa. I hope you don't mind me calling directly, Cara said. I just had a few questions about your presentation. Melissa hesitated. My presentation? Yes, Cara replied. The one your manager sent us last week. I wanted to confirm you were the one who created the brand story, correct? Melissa's heartbeat quickened. Yes, I was. There was a pause, then Kara's voice hardened. That's what I thought. Because, Melissa, the same deck has been presented to one of our competitors. Identical slides, same design. Only this time it was rebranded under a different name. A silence fell heavy over the line. And, Kara added, her tone sharp as glass, it was presented by your manager. Melissa's grip tightened around her phone. Her pulse roared in her ears. This wasn't sabotage anymore. It was theft and corporate fraud. And for the first time in months, Melissa Hart felt something new rise inside her. Not fear, not grief, but purpose. Because Bryce Dalton had no idea what kind of storm he had just awakened. The call from Kara Lynn didn't end with anger. It ended with silence. Melissa sat there, phone pressed to her ear, barely breathing. We'll be conducting our own review, Kara said finally, but I wanted to hear your side first. Melissa could feel the tremor in her voice. I didn't know. I had no idea he'd done that. I believe you, Kara said, her voice firm but measured. We worked with enough agencies to know who does the work and who takes the credit. You were the detail person, Melissa. I saw that. Before hanging up, Kara added one last line, one that stayed with Melissa for days. You should protect yourself. Men like that don't stop until someone makes them. That weekend, Melissa barely slept. Her mind replayed everything, the fake smile, the corrupted file, the meeting, the HR warning. It all lined up now perfectly. Too perfectly. Bryce had planned the sabotage weeks in advance. But why risk stealing from a client? Why take her deck and rebrand it for another company? By Monday morning, she had her answer. An email landed in the company's all-hands thread. Exciting news. Halcyon Strategies welcomes a new client, Vectra Systems, a promising AI startup with ambitious global goals. The account will be led by our very own account director, Bryce Dalton. Melissa's stomach dropped. Vectra Systems, the competitor. The same company Kara Lynn mentioned during their call. Bryce hadn't just stolen her work, he'd sold it. The Nexora pitch, rebranded with Vectra's logo and colors, was now the foundation of Halcyon's newest deal. It wasn't just unethical, it was corporate fraud. And now Melissa had proof. She started documenting everything, screenshots of filed timestamps, email chains proving she'd sent the deck first, cloud metadata showing creation dates, all pointing to her as the original author. She printed everything, quietly, one by one, careful not to trigger suspicion. Each night, she went home with another small piece of evidence tucked into her laptop sleeve. And yet, outwardly, she acted calm. She still attended meetings, smiled in hallways, answered politely when Bryce asked for progress updates. But every look, every smirk he gave her, only strengthened her resolve. Bryce thought she was broken. In reality, she was preparing. A week later, a strange tension filled the office. Whispers floated between desks. Something was happening with the Nexora account. By mid-afternoon, Melissa learned what it was. Nexora had requested an emergency video call with the agency's CEO, Richard Halcyon, and senior leadership, to discuss concerns about brand integrity. Bryce looked calm when the memo went out, but Melissa noticed the tightness in his jaw. He was nervous, and that gave her hope. Richard Halcyon was a legend in the Chicago marketing world, a self-made executive who built his agency from scratch. He wasn't easily fooled. Melissa had only met him twice, but both times she remembered his sharp eyes, the kind that missed nothing. When he walked into the meeting room that morning, everyone went silent. Bryce stood, smiling confidently, and shook his hand. Richard, always good to see you. Likewise, Bryce, Richard said, his voice unreadable. Let's get started. Melissa wasn't invited to the call, of course. She sat outside the glass room, pretending to work while her mind buzzed with anticipation. Through the frosted glass, she could see movement, Richard leaning forward, Kara Lynn's face on the screen, Bryce gesturing rapidly, smiling too much. Then, suddenly, the door opened. Melissa, Richard said, can you join us for a moment? Her heart jumped. Bryce's face went pale. Melissa entered the room slowly. Cara Lynn's face appeared on the big monitor, calm and composed. "Melissa," she greeted. "Good to see you again." Bryce forced a chuckle. "We just wanted to clarify a few misunderstandings. The files, the overlap, typical project chaos, right?" Cara ignored him. "Melissa, could you walk us through your original presentation?" Melissa met her gaze through the screen. "I can. I still have the draft, time-stamped 3 weeks before the Vectra deck was sent." She opened her laptop, connected to the monitor, and pulled up her original file. Slide after slide appeared, the same as the Vectra version, but with Nexora's name, her design elements, and her notes. Richard's eyes didn't move from the screen. "And these are your files?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, you can verify the creation dates." Cara spoke again, her voice firm. "For context, we received this identical presentation last week from Halcyon, repackaged for our competitor. It's word-for-word identical, down to the metadata tags." Silence filled the room. Rice's smile faltered. "Now hold on," he said quickly. "We share frameworks across clients all the time. It's part of—" "Frameworks don't include client-specific copy," Cara cut in coldly, "or our internal data." Richard's expression hardened. "Bryce, step out for a moment." For the first time, Bryce hesitated, then walked out stiffly, avoiding Melissa's eyes. Once he was gone, Richard sat back, hands clasped. "Melissa, tell me everything." She took a deep breath and told him, from the corrupted file to the HR warning, to the call from Nexora, every detail. Richard didn't interrupt once. When she finished, his voice was quiet, almost too calm. "You did the right thing, Melissa, and you documented everything." She nodded and slid a small folder across the table, printouts of emails, timestamps, and screenshots. He opened it, scanned the first page, and sighed. "This isn't just a mistake," he said. "It's a violation of client trust, and if what you've told me checks out, it's also theft." Within hours, the office buzzed with rumors. Bryce had been called into a closed-door meeting with Richard and HR. By late afternoon, he was seen leaving the building, his expression tight, phone clutched to his ear. No one knew what was said, but everyone noticed the shift. Melissa's inbox, which had been silent for weeks, began filling again. Coworkers suddenly remembered her name. The HR manager stopped by her desk and said softly, "You might want to stay close to your phone tomorrow. The CEO may need you." The next morning, her phone rang again. This time, it wasn't a warning. "Melissa," Cara said, "I wanted you to know Nexora is filing a formal complaint against Halcyon for breach of confidentiality. We've also shared evidence with the agency's CEO." Melissa's stomach twisted. "What happens now?" "That's up to them," Cara replied. "But off the record, if you ever consider leaving that agency, call me. We could use someone like you." By Friday, Bryce's office was empty, his nameplate gone. His desk cleared, word spread quickly. He had been suspended pending investigation. No one knew the details, but everyone guessed. The same people who whispered that Melissa had failed were now whispering something else. That Bryce had been caught, that he'd crossed the wrong client, that maybe, just maybe, the quiet strategist wasn't as powerless as they thought. For the first time in months, Melissa walked into the office without that weight pressing on her chest. She wasn't smiling, not yet, but her silence carried power now. At noon, she received a message from Richard's assistant. Subject, CEO meeting 3:00 p.m. She took a deep breath. Something told her this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the reckoning. Soft fade-out, narrator voice lowering. Bryce Dalton had stolen her work and her dignity, but he had underestimated her patience. And now, with the truth in motion and the CEO's eyes finally open, the storm he started was about to come crashing down. The Monday after the public statement, the Halcyon office felt different. The laughter in the hallways was quieter, the small talk more cautious. No one mentioned Bryce's name, but his shadow lingered everywhere, in whispered glances and unfinished sentences. Melissa walked through the open workspace, feeling eyes follow her. Not in pity this time, in respect. People who had once avoided her were suddenly offering smiles, asking if she'd like coffee, complimenting her strength. But she didn't need their validation anymore. She wasn't interested in office redemption stories. She wanted closure. By the end of that week, the company audit was complete, and what it uncovered went far deeper than anyone had expected. Bryce hadn't just stolen from Melissa, he'd built a pattern of it. Client decks, research documents, brand proposals, dozens of files traced back to other employees, repackaged and sold off to external contractors for consulting credits. He'd made tens of thousands in quiet side deals, and worse, he'd used Halcyon's name to do it. The audit file landed on Richard Halcyon's desk on a Friday morning. Within an hour, he called an emergency board meeting. Melissa wasn't part of that room, but the effect rippled through the building like thunder. Half an hour later, word broke. Bryce Dalton had been formally blacklisted from the agency network. His name was being reported to the American Marketing Ethics Board. In other words, his career was finished. The public exposure. The industry loved a good scandal, especially one wrapped in moral irony. Director ousted after stealing employees' work. Agency whistleblower saves multi-million contract. The woman who outsmarted her manager's sabotage. Headlines spread across marketing forums, podcasts, and LinkedIn think pieces. People debated ethics, accountability, the courage to speak up. Melissa stayed silent through it all. She didn't do interviews, didn't respond to comments, didn't post a victory message. She didn't have to. Her silence said enough. A week later, Richard called her in again. He wasn't the polished executive this time. He looked older, tired, humbled. "Melissa," he began, "I owe you an apology, not just as a CEO, but as a man who should have seen this sooner." She shook her head. "You trusted the wrong person. It happens." He leaned forward. "No, I ignored the right person. That's worse." Then he smiled slightly. "The board has approved your promotion. You'll be leading the new ethics and client integrity division. We want you to rebuild what Bryce broke." Melissa stared at him, stunned. "You're giving me his role." "No," he said. "I'm giving you something bigger. His job was sales, yours will be protection." He slid a sleek folder across the desk. Director of Ethics and Compliance, Halcyon Strategies. Her name printed beneath in bold. 2 weeks later, Melissa was leaving the office late one night when she saw a figure waiting near the parking lot entrance. Bryce. He looked different now, the perfect haircut gone unkempt, his suit wrinkled. He wasn't the confident director anymore. He was just another man with too many regrets and nowhere left to go. "Melissa," he said quietly, "can we talk?" She stopped, keeping her distance. "About what?" "You won, okay. You got what you wanted." Her voice was calm. "I never wanted this, Bryce. I just wanted my work to be mine." He rubbed his forehead. "You don't understand. I was under pressure to land new clients, to prove myself to Richard. You think it's easy when your entire job depends on numbers." She took a step closer, eyes unflinching. "You think it was easy watching you destroy mine." For a moment, neither spoke. The city hum echoed in the background, the sound of cabs, late trains, and a world that kept moving no matter who fell. "Finally," she said softly, "the difference between you and me, Bryce, is that I built things to last. You built shortcuts." Then she walked past him, her heels echoing against the concrete. He didn't follow. Months passed. Under Melissa's leadership, Halcyon implemented new systems. Independent data reviews, transparent project ownership, zero-tolerance ethics codes. Her name began circulating in professional circles, not as the whistleblower, but as the woman who transformed a scandal into reform. Meanwhile, Bryce faded quietly from the industry. Rumors said he tried to start a consulting firm under a fake name. It never got off the ground. But fate has a poetic way of closing circles. One spring afternoon, Melissa attended a digital ethics conference in New York, a massive event sponsored by top firms. When she stepped onto the stage as a keynote speaker, she scanned the crowd and froze. In the back row, seated among junior attendees, was Bryce Dalton. He looked small there, older, thinner, listening intently as she spoke about honesty, integrity, and the cost of deceit. She didn't pause, she didn't even acknowledge him. Instead, she ended her speech with one final line, a line that made the audience erupt in applause. If you try to silence integrity, it doesn't disappear. It documents everything. Her gaze lingered briefly in his direction before she turned away. That was her revenge, not vengeance in fury, but victory in silence, to stand taller while he sat in the shadows. Months later, Melissa accepted Cara Lynn's offer and joined Nexora as head of strategic partnerships. Her first day there, Cara greeted her with a warm smile. "You know," Cara said, "sometimes justice doesn't come in courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it's just the right people finding each other after the wrong ones fall away." Melissa nodded, her heart light. For the first time in years, she felt peace. She wasn't just rebuilding a career, she was reclaiming her voice. Soft cinematic music fades in again, hopeful, reflective. The narrator's voice lowers. Revenge doesn't always come in flames or shouting matches. Sometimes it's quiet, it's paperwork, it's proof. It's the truth finding daylight after being buried too long. Melissa didn't ruin Bryce's career, he did. All she did was hold up a mirror. And when the dust settled, she didn't just win. She healed the company, her reputation, and most importantly, herself. Because when someone deletes your work, they're really trying to delete your value. But if you keep your records, your receipts, and your courage, no one can erase your truth.